My name is Terri Messenger, and I am
Hey, and welcome to Terri Messenger's Genius Zone. And, this is the place and the space where you are going to get your own free masterclass absolutely free. I know my husband's a type 2 diabetic, and when we looked into the spiritual element of that, it is where a person is constantly yearning for something they didn't do from the past. And I do hear him do that a lot. Like he'll say, oh, if only, I wished I had done this. And it's like, well, that's back there and you can't change it now. And I tell him and I remind him that, this is a big part of, especially someone who suddenly comes into diabetes or someone who is suffering the different elements. And I mean, it can show up and manifest in so many different ways.
Oh, so many ways.
It can show up in some people, it will show up in their body and obviously their health, and in other people it can show up in their emotional well-being. So in fact, I believe being crippled inside from the spiritual and emotional point of view is sometimes worse than when it doesn't show on the body.
What it primarily does is stop them getting onto medication. But I'll give you a typical example. Years ago when I first started, I had a lady come to me who we all started working on adrenals, and we did an age regression on her. And I think it was when she was about 30. And she said, oh, that's when I had my nervous breakdown. But she didn't write that down on the intake form because to her it wasn't a trauma. It was just part of her story. She didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
And so these things happen to us, and it is just part of our story, and we don't always understand really what it's done or doing to us because we haven't healed it or processed it or shifted it. It's sitting in there on a cellular level, just working its way through all those maybe anger or trauma or frustration or hurt or shame or pain or and it's all sitting in our system. And kinesiology really is about drawing it out and shifting it on.
Yeah, that is absolutely amazing. Hello, and welcome to this week's edition on Terri Messenger's Genius Zone. And we have a really powerful healing journey lined up for our listeners and people where we're going to go on an incredible journey. If you want to know how natural medicine, kinesiology, NLP, and hypnosis can change the trajectory of your life, then you're not going to want to miss this. And at the end, we're going to give you a snippet of how you can totally regulate your nervous system. So you will feel all the better from listening to this show. And without further ado, I give you the very gifted, very passionate kinesiologist, NLP practitioner, and hypnotherapist, Liane Cugley. Hi, Liane.
Hi.
Welcome to you. And how are you on this fine day?
Oh, loving this weather. It's fantastic.
Now, we have something in common, apart from both being passionate about changing lives. We are both in Perth, Western Australia,
Yes.
which is so unusual for me,
It
because
is.
usually I'm speaking to someone in Greece or in England or USA, Canada. So thank you for joining us. And, you know, it's great to hear how someone has gone through all the things that you've gone through, and you've been able to find a natural way through without having to use medication. And I guess one of the big landmarks in your journey was when your son was born. And if you can talk me through, you know, what were some of his problems that caused him to be so sickly, and, you know, how did it affect him and your family?
Well, both my sons actually were born very small. They were not really early, but they were both born very small. I had preeclampsia both times, so that causes them to be born small. My oldest had what they call silent reflux, which they didn't really, we didn't work it out until he was nearly 5 months old. So he just screamed constantly.
I know
put him
that
down.
one.
And then as he got a bit older, he developed asthma, and quite bad asthma, like in and out of hospital. So the medical profession just wanted to keep giving more and more steroids, and I wasn't very comfortable with that. I knew there could be a different way, because I've always been very drawn to looking at alternative forms of healing, if you like, from a young age. And I took him off to a naturopath, and that's what we determined he had a few allergies, not so much allergies, but intolerances to different things. And we got him on a regime of a different diet and some supplements, and he just did a full 180. He was amazing, and really only had one hospitalisation after that,
Wow.
and has never been. Massive turnaround. Put on weight, was happy, was not, sort of throwing up, having all the reflux all the time. It was really quite a profound change. And then we moved up to the beautiful Perth Hills, and I found a naturopath locally who also did sort of basic kinesiology. So myself and my two sons saw her regularly. In fact, I actually saw her in Coles yesterday, and she's retired now. She's in her 80s, and that's where my love of kinesiology was born.
Wow, that is absolutely amazing. What a story. Look, there's nothing like it. Now, you know, I also understand the reflux thing, because my third child, a daughter, was born, and she was so different to the other two because she screamed her head off, and she lived on Propulsid so that, you know, I could keep my sanity. And, you know, as much as, you know, I wasn't married to Ian back in those days. So, you know, our neighbour across the road was a chiropractor, and he kept on saying she needs adjustments, she needs to go to a naturopath, and I just ignored it. So it's interesting how life can change when you find the right healing method. Now, you had a bit of a disaster going back into your childhood, because I mean, I couldn't think of anything worse than this, actually. I don't think I could, except, you know, maybe torture chamber. But you went through losing all your hair when you were 11 years old. What on earth caused you to lose all your hair as an 11-year-old without chemo?
Well, they're not really sure. I used to lose patches of it from stress. My home environment was a bit stressful, and I actually got really sick when I was 11. I think I had German measles and something else, and then I got really bad food poisoning, and they think my immune system just couldn't cope, and that was just like what happened from my immune system just sort of trying to expel it, I think. And they said, yeah, my hair would never grow back. Tried few different therapies. I remember that they froze my head with like dry ice, and they said if that didn't work, that's it. And that didn't work. Anyway, my nana, who I grew up with, used to go to the health food shop. She was the one I feel that really bore me into more alternative medicine. And, yeah, she started giving me supplements and rubbing a tonic on my head, which was given to an English woman from Romani gypsies in the UK. And I have never seen it since, though, I have to admit. I can still remember the bottle, exactly what it looked like, and the smell. And she used to rub it on my hair morning and night. And it was funny. They were always checking. My mother, my nana, always checking. And then one day there was just one hair, and everyone was so excited that we had to ring the UK. And like, you didn't ring the UK because it was so expensive. Everyone had to stand around the phone. And my childhood friend, they were Italian. Her mum was a hairdresser. So she was always rubbing things like beer on my head and raw eggs and things like that. So I think maybe just the combination. Yeah, apparently beer. I don't know. It's an old Italian wives' tale, and raw eggs. So she was always rubbing things on my head as well. And, yeah, my hair grew back. And I think when I went into year 10 was when I stopped more or less wearing my wig.
Okay, so I'm just imagining going to the hairdresser feeling really excited about one hair and saying, let's do something with this hair. But this is just from a humorous point of view. But whatever you do, don't pull it out. But sometimes I know the Chinese, they actually shave their children's heads so that it can grow back really, really thick. But
yeah, and a lot of Middle Eastern as well do that.
Yeah. No, I imagine it would definitely work. Now, that is definitely enough to put the fire in anyone's belly. And I always say that passion and purpose quite often come from pain. So pain and adversity. And this is where people that are as fortunate as you and myself and many, many other, passionate leaders, they can revolutionize their lives once they understand what they've learned, what they can do as an ambassador to move forward and be that revolution. And of course, we're going to move into your journey, how you became, obviously a kinesiologist. And for the life of me, I know my husband as a chiropractor, he used kinesiology. And if I can say this so that, you can perhaps shed some light on, how this actually works. But he would put a book on the patient's belly or on their solar plexus, and he would turn the page and it would have all these lists of emotional pain. It would also say, beside whether it was like sexual abuse, violence, abandonment. And, he would be able to pick up from feeling the book next to their body, knowing exactly what was going on. Perhaps you can shed light, because I could never work that out from that point because, I do a lot of subconscious work, but kinesiology is not my practice, my main practice. So can you go into, obviously, kinesiology from that point of view of what it can do for the human body and how it has helped you and other people since you've been practicing?
Yes, well, believe it or not, kinesiology actually started with a chiropractor way back 100 odd years ago. Yep. So what we do is we use an indicator muscle or a monitoring muscle. And the type of kinesiology I do, we use a lot of mudras or hand modes. So we have different hand modes for different things, whether it could be a flower essence or something spiritual, or I use a lot of formatting. So we might look at, is it something within your limbic area of your brain that we need to look at? Is there some brain integration that needs to go on? Do you need some sound? And this muscle, this indicator muscle, will drive the whole session and lock or unlock to tell me what you want. So I'm really just like the detective looking for the areas in the body that may be under stress. We tend to call everything in kinesiology stress. It's showing stress in some way or another.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because they do say the body keeps the score. You know, we can
100%.
we can lie from our mouths, but what we hold in our body is like the library of, you know, all of the things that have happened, the secrets and the DNA, and even from past generations. So
100%.
So, you know, do you use it through the hand? Do you actually use it using muscle testing? Can you talk me through some of the modalities that help you to discover what's going on in a person's body?
So we may start with a issue. It might be a issue as far as they're not feeling productive. They might feel stuck in a certain area of their life. So we might put an affirmation or a goal in to start. That is one way. Most of my clients, or a large percentage of my clients, actually start seeing me for adrenal stress, because majority of the population have got accumulative stress. It's just built up to the point where there's so many things happening where they're maybe not remembering things well, they're not sleeping well, they just feel irritable, they just feel tense, they're just highly emotive, they might have apathy, that kind of thing. So I do see a lot of people for adrenal stress, not fatigue, as stress. So with that, we would check what we call the sartorius muscle, which is a leg muscle. That'll indicate for me what level of stress your adrenals are at. And then from there, we will look at what do we need to balance it. Like there might be an age that comes up where something has triggered your adrenals to fire off, and they've kept firing off ever since.
Wow.
We might need flower essence or a crystal or an essential oil. And it's the information within that that can guide the client to understand what they might need to change or what. So again, we're bringing a lot from the unconscious mind into the conscious mind so that you can process it. Because if you don't know it's there, it's very hard for you to process it and move it on. So it's very much about getting to the root cause of why this one may have happened. We don't always need to know that. What we want to know is the stress of what is causing you to feel this way or your body to have that physical reaction, and removing the energetic charge around that. That's primarily what kinesiology does. It removes the energetic charge from your physical, emotional, spiritual, neurological bodies, pathways, so that you can come back into a centered, calm, balanced state. It's to calm down your nervous system and bring you back into equilibrium. That's really what it's about. And to shift what no longer is serving you. I used to be the biggest holder-oner of things. Like I struggled so hard to let things go. And now through all the kinesiology I've had on myself, all the healing that I've done, I can shift stuff so quickly now because I've built up.
Yeah, you would be able to, because, you know, there's a sense of you would know too whereabouts in the body is the person holding that pain. Like, is it in the solar plexus? Is it in the gut? Is it in the back? You know, and every part of our body, it's like reflexology on the foot. Every part of our body is reflected. And, you know, it's interesting too, because you also do NLP, which then becomes mind as well as body and how they're interconnected. And, you know, my belief is that when people do get sick, and whether it's emotionally, physically, or spiritually, there's always a reason that the subconscious, being that it doesn't care about right or wrong, it doesn't know between fantasy or reality, it just does whatever it feels it would required to do to get the person where they need to be. And I remember, for an example, when I was absolutely workaholic and I was in real estate, and I literally did not know when to stop. But that's because I was unhealed. I was driven from a lot of stuff that I was running away from. So instead of using a drug, I used workaholism like a person would use alcohol. And, you know, the universe.
I did the same.
Yeah, so whatever it was, you know, that divine energy from above would send me this wonderful gift called illness. I would literally become a crap magnet and get every single conceivable flu virus going around. And, you know, I came to know much later after I'd been healed that really that was the universe's way of saying, well, if you can't slow down, Terri, we'll make you slow down. So it was almost like a gift. So with the adrenal stress, what do you think is the undergirding issue with people that are us, you know, suffering adrenals? I mean, there's so much, you know.
There can be a number of things. It can sometimes be a traumatic event that basically has switched the trigger of pumping out the stress hormones, and the body doesn't know how to sort of switch it off. Normally it's an accumulation. Like in the Western world, for example, we're just busy all the time. We've got overstimulation. We are expected to just keep working and working and working and working. We don't always eat well, and we don't always sleep well, and we certainly don't exercise enough, most people, because they're too busy. So the body just gets to a point where it says, I can't keep doing this. And what happens is, I normally see most people in what we call level 2 adrenal stress. If you get to level 3, then you start getting really sick. I have an autoimmune disease. I have Hashimoto's, and I know that it was from me burning my adrenals out from a young age. I had a lot of stress very young in the environment I lived in. I married an alcoholic. My first husband was an alcoholic. I had a very stressful job for a very long time. I then had problem pregnancies, problem births, all the issues that go around having little babies, and it just got to the point where my body said, I can't do this anymore, and something broke. And yeah.
Amazing, yeah.
And so this is what's so important, to don't leave it that long. Most people feel like they can function in level 2 adrenal stress, and they are. And it's not until we start monitoring the adrenals through the sartorius muscle, that they realise, oh yeah, right, there's something not so great here.
Yeah.
And then once they're balanced, we go. It normally takes about 4 to 5 sessions, because we look at all different areas of the adrenals and the meridians running through them, and the stress hormones and the glands associated that function with the stress hormones to do with the adrenals. So it's a very complex process. But normally after about 3 sessions, they start to feel so different.
Have you ever found that someone that obviously is in that, you know, adrenal stress mode, perhaps at level 1 or 2, has been able to literally come to someone like yourself, or someone that really specializes in the same work, and literally be modified to the point of they don't need medication for, like, you know, Hashimoto's, thyroid, adrenal glands and things like that? Have you ever seen or known that to happen?
Yeah, I have found that they can lower sometimes their medication, but what it primarily does is stop them getting onto medication.
Yes, that's
because
what I
they're
mentioned.
not burning out their systems, right? It also helps with a lot of anxiety and depression. Balancing the adrenals, because if you think about it, if your body's just, you're going to have anxiety as well, because your body's in that complete stress state. Your mind's going 100 miles an hour.
Yeah. Do you think a lot of these people tend to be the people that suppress, perhaps, like, it
is suppression. I just think it's people don't realise how busy they are, how much they put on their plate, how much physical, emotional and mental stress people are carrying around. I'll give you a typical example. Years ago when I first started, I had a lady come to me who we all started working on adrenals, and we did an age regression on her, And I think it was when she was about 30. And she said, oh, that's when I had my nervous breakdown. But she didn't write that down on the intake form because to her it wasn't a trauma. It was just part of her story. She didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
And so these things happen to us, and it is just part of our story. And we don't always understand really what it's done or doing to us because we haven't healed it or processed it or shifted it. It's sitting in there on a cellular level, just working its way through all those maybe anger or trauma or frustration or hurt or shame or pain or, and it's all sitting in our system. And kinesiology really is about drawing it out and shifting it on.
Yeah, that is absolutely amazing. I know my husband's a type 2 diabetic, and when we looked into the spiritual element of that, it is where a person is constantly yearning for something they didn't do from the past. And I do hear him do that a lot. Like he'll say, oh, if only I wished I had done this. And it's like, well, that's back there and you can't change it now. And I tell him and I remind him that, this is a big part of, especially someone who suddenly comes into diabetes or someone who is suffering the different elements. And I mean, it can show up and manifest in so many different ways.
Oh,
as
so many ways.
It can show up in some people. It will show up in their body and obviously their health, and in other people it can show up in their emotional well-being. Yeah. So in fact, I believe being crippled inside from the spiritual and emotional point of view is sometimes worse than when it doesn't show on the body because people don't understand it.
Exactly.
And if there was more awareness, and we'll touch on that with you in just a moment, if there was more awareness that this can be healed from the point of your past, it may not be a cure because we're not allowed to talk about cures. However, it can certainly be regulated and made so it doesn't get any worse. But you also incorporate NLP. So as an NLP master trainer, I would be very, very curious as to know, if someone comes to you for the adrenal issues, the health issues, in what way and what method do you use NLP to help them as part of your healing process to move forward?
Well, I explain more of the concepts. So, for example, I speak a lot about the 6 basic human needs. And, quite often we pick up these programs and these illnesses because it matches, it fills those basic human needs that we need. Even though it might be negatively, we're getting them fulfilled. I'll give you an example. Yesterday, working on a client, she's come to me before, but she's come back, her anxiety is through the roof. We're doing her adrenals. It's a lot to do with someone in her family and the way this person in her family reacts with her and other people. And I sat down, I explained to her the 6 basic human needs from NLP and why this person in her life keeps doing what she's doing because she's getting those needs met, even though it's negatively. So it gave my client an idea of like, oh, okay, like so she's not going to change this other person, but if she can have maybe a little bit, because she's got to the point where she's done, she's just done. But if we can get my client to understand why this other person may be the way they are, and she can have a little bit more compassion and understanding, then it's going to help take the stress off her. So it's not about actually the other person, but it's going to help take the stress off her. So it's things like that I incorporate just to give people a bit more of an understanding. And I do ask questions as well that really get them to start thinking. I come from a sales background, so I am very good at probing and getting to the core of what's going on. Sorry, what was that? I can't hear you. You've frozen. Sorry, you froze for a second.
You do know. Am I back?
You are now, yep.
Beautiful. So you do know the right questions to ask. And, you know, this is part of what makes NLP so very, very powerful.
Exactly.
And we also know that changing people's perception of the world changes so much. Now, I want to just dig deep into the 6 human needs, more so for our audience, because I believe this is a really important presupposition of being able to understand where you're coming from and when there's problems with relationships, where the other person's coming from. So can you go through the 6 human needs so that our audience understands what predominantly, how people are operating in their value system?
Well, the first one is certainty. So needing to know that, you know, the tap will turn on, your light will turn on, your car will start, things like that. The second one is variety or uncertainty, because we need that little bit of stimulation, something to be a little bit different, because we become bored otherwise. Now, with significance, which is the third one, I personally see this more as acceptance. We want to be significant to others, but we also want to have acceptance. That's where I very much feel that the number 3 is at. Number 4 is love and connection, which is self-explanatory. And then we have number 5, which is growth, and number 6, which is contribution. I learned that the first 4 are needed, whether you get them positively or negatively. I put it down to, I use a scenario when I try and explain it to people. So I don't know if you remember years ago when we had the asylum seekers in Port Hedland, and they'd been there for many years, and then they actually rioted and set the place on fire. And there was a lot of condemnation for them. But to me, this is a prime example of their basic needs, not 6 basic human needs that you must have, not being met. They're not getting any certainty. They're not getting any variety. They've got no significance. There's no love and connection, and there's no growth, and they're not being able to contribute. So the only way they could do that was to do what they did to get those needs met.
Yeah, I mean, that's profound, because I know that I was speaking September 11 when we had that last week. We were looking at, you know, what happened September 11, and with that presupposition in NLP that everybody's coming from the best outcome they want. They're always coming from a positive intention. You know, one would say, well, you know, in this case, how can you see that? And when you just said that, I believe that gives a very well-rounded, you know, idea that people, you know, they're uncertain. They need that certainty. They need to be recognized. They need to feel that, you know, they're standing their ground. So when you look at it that way, I mean, it's, you know, you can't say that anything like that is ever, you know, forgivable. But the fact is that they're still coming from that place. And I feel that those human needs, and I like the way you said also certainty being number 1 and then uncertainty being number 2, because uncertainty really fits that entrepreneurial spirit of adventure, you know, or people that like to take a little bit of risk. And, you know, the fact that we need it, that's profound. So,
and by having variety, that is actually how we build new synapses in our brain. It's how we actually expand our brain physically, is by having new and varied experiences. If we're doing the same old, none of our neurological pathways change or grow. We actually have to have them to expand our brain, physically as well as psychologically.
Because that's, I believe, too, where they call neuroplasticity.
Exactly. Yep. 100%.
Yeah. So when we're a child, they say under the age of 5, we are like a sponge, and that's when the learning, hence why we develop a lot of our belief systems around that age. But the more flexible, the more pliable the brain, and as you've just said and confirmed, what is the contribution factor to that? And I know Napoleon Hill used to always say, it's good to change up your environment, to get out, because you can get locked in and lose your inspiration. But if you want to get your inspiration back and really awaken some of those new ideas, go out and change your environment.
Yeah, have a different scenery.
Yeah. Now we're going to talk about hypnosis, my favorite topic here, because a lot of people, they have these ideas about hypnosis being like the person on stage that turns everybody into a chicken or makes people believe that they can cluck like a chicken. But you and I know from the therapy model, the only reason people are doing that anyway is that the facilitator has given them enough confidence to get up and start clucking around on stage and doing something that a child might do. Other than them really being under control, it's more about them being liberated. But tell me in which way and what hypnosis does for your clients.
I have a couple of different formats. So I have the more traditional form of hypnosis. So I'll see people for cessation of smoking, anxiety, fear of flying, things like that. But I also have a lot of spiritual-based hypnotherapy. So I have some different protocols that I've learned and I've got, but I've also written some myself. So I have a program that I've just finished running actually online called Renewing You, and that is very much, we have NLP incorporated in that, and it's a 4-step program, which I do one-on-one, but I also do it in groups as well. And that is very spiritual-based hypnosis. So we're dealing a lot with archangels and ascended masters and things like that. So I do the two. I do ones where it's more traditional. People come for a specific, want to stop smoking, and then I have the more spiritual where it might be removing limiting beliefs, or you want to have forgiveness, or setting intentions for yourself and giving yourself permission, or I do past life regression as well, or we might want to look at, I've got a fantastic one that I've learned called Power Reclaim. So they're all different. So I've got quite a varied access, if you like, to the protocols that I can offer people.
You certainly have, and you're much more woo-woo than I expected, which is amazing.
I'm very woo-woo.
Yes. So tell me, about this power one. I mean, you talk about it, but let's have some insight on that, modality that you founded.
So with the Power Reclaim, I learned that I did in 2020. I did a 5-day retreat. So I was, which was all about empowerment. It's a self-empowerment course, but for practitioners. So to help other people. So that it was part of it. What we do is we do what we call a pour out to start with, and it's finding out areas of your life where you feel like you might have given your power away. And we rate them 0 to 10. So 0 being the least, 10 being the highest. And then we look at the main 5 emotions. So anger, hurt, frustration, shame, sadness, that kind of thing. And where is that sitting for you in relation collectively to these issues where you feel like you've given your power away? And then we do the process. And during the process, you basically give all of that to an ascended master who then helps you clear it. And we then do the rating again, like where is that issue now for you? 9 times out of 10, it'll be a 0. Occasionally it still might be a 1, but normally it's a 0. And then we look at the different emotions, where are they sitting for you now? And they're normally always at a 0. So it's really about cleansing it's very much working on a spiritual level as well as the unconscious level with the Power Reclaim. People have had massive shifts with that process. It's a long process. It's very in-depth, but yeah, they've just empowered again. They're just empowered because they've taken their power back from what might have been taken from them, or, you know, intentionally and unintentionally. And where they've given their power as well, not just had it taken, because we give our power away all the time if we're not careful, you know?
We do. I think that's what a really big issue, actually. So when you talk about the Ascended Masters, because I'm thinking about our audience in terms of what is in a sense that, you know, what is a, you know, that kind of a master? What does that mean to have an Ascended Master? Who is this Ascended Master?
Well, the archangels, so Archangel Raphael, Uriel, Sandalphon, you name them. There's a lot. Metatron, sorry. You know, we might work with them. I'm running my self-love mastery afternoon next month as an in-person event, and in that process we use Archangel Chamuel. He is the Archangel of self-love and compassion. So in that process that I've written for that mastery workshop that I run, we primarily use him in the process to help remove anything that is not giving you self-love and compassion.
That's you know, truly profound. And, you know, obviously I really believe in guides. I really believe in protection. And it's interesting, you obviously are more of an expert in understanding which archangel is going to do what. And that's just incredible. So, you know, I am sure 100% that our audience would love to see, hear, or experience a demonstration where obviously we are, you know, restricted to a few things here, being time. For those listening on the podcast, you may not be able to see the demonstration, but maybe if you could bring to the table something that's really going to help the audience. And the way that I would position this, you know, Liane, is to look at, you know, your client from the point of, you know, that typical person who is really going through their struggle right now and what they need to eliminate. Maybe it is really, you know, that stress that is causing the cortisol to act in the body and the adrenal glands to really just play havoc. So perhaps you can choose one, a small demo,
for sure.
Science.
So I show a lot of clients this to take home with them, and it can be used anywhere, anytime. So it's what we call emotional stress diffusion, and we have many of them, but this one is for present time stress. And I use it when I can't sleep, because I do tend to have a little bit of a monkey mind. And I think I've probably got a bit of underlying ADHD, to be honest with you, as well. So this one is a great one for kids, and it can be used anywhere. So say you're at work and you're in a meeting and it's stressful and you've had enough and you just want to get up and get out, because what happens is when you get into that sort of fight and flight mode and you trigger off your adrenals, like your frontal cortex shuts off, so you're not listening anyway, you're not taking any of it in, because you just want to run out of there. So this can help calm the present time stress and your frontal cortex down so that you can, you know, be present, if you like. So there's a couple of different ways you can do it. So how I do it is if you just go straight above your eyes, and you'll feel there's some little bumps there. So I call them your horns, your little horns. So we want a neutral touch. So you can either do 2 fingers like that or a thumb and 2 fingers. I do it as a thumb and 2 fingers because I just find it's easier, and then I can hold my arm like this if I want to. So if you're in a meeting and it's all getting a bit too much, you can just be doing this and people are not really going to know what you're doing. It just looks like you're holding your head. So you hold those points there, and what happens is the more you practice this, you'll feel pulses there. Some people will feel them automatically. With me, it took a bit of practice. So hold them until you feel them pulsing. And even if you don't feel them pulsing, just hold it anyway, because you're downloading current time stress. So when you do feel them pulse, normally they don't come in together, they alternate. So you want to hold them until they're pulsing together. So it's just a great way of calming down your frontal cortex, calming down your nervous system, releasing present time stress. I do this if I can't sleep, so I'm on my side. If my mind will not stop and I've got too much and I want to go to sleep, I just lie on my side and hold those points, and normally within a few minutes I'm asleep.
That's a stress release, isn't it? That's a stress release, because I just thought of something then that I didn't know, and that is that Ian uses it in his chiropractic practice. So when a client's stressed, he puts his thing here, and I always wondered why. And and it does actually work.
Yeah. Well, you think that the great sculpture, the thinking man, that's what he's doing.
Wow. Look at that.
And yeah, and I mean, you can do it another way as well. You can do it with your hands front and back. But this one is a little bit more subtle.
Yeah.
And even if you're at work and you're feeling overwhelmed, go and sit in the toilet for a couple of minutes and just hold that and do the deep breathing. In through the nose, hold for a second, out through the mouth. Just imagine all the stress leaving the bottom of your feet. It's a really quick technique, and it's great for calming kids down if they're having a bit of a
So for our listeners, what I'd like to suggest is that we just emphasize on what's happening. So we're either getting 2 fingers, placing it on our forehead that is above the eyebrow. We're ultimately seeking a pulse, and do that either with 2 fingers gently just above, below your hairline, above your eyebrows, or you can use your thumb and your 2 fingers.
Fingers. So it's just neutral touch is what we call it in kinesiology. So it's either 2 fingers or a thumb and 2 fingers, and that's neutral touch. So you just want to have the neutral touch, and it's normally halfway between your eyebrow and your hairline, basically, and directly in line if you're looking straight with your pupils.
Nice.
Yeah.
Got it.
And just, imagining, coming back into yourself, anchoring yourself down, the deep breathing, and it just is calming down your sympathetic nervous system. So you're getting into that parasympathetic nervous system with the rest and digest. That's really what it's doing there.
I love that. Now, I've got my last question for you, and it's the question that I love to ask everyone on the show, because I find that momentum starts to build as we go towards the end. And 9 times out of 10, a lot of the people want to keep on going, and I want to keep on enjoying it. Instead, I ask this question. So if you got off the show and you were really feeling that you were able to give so much to the audience, which I'm so grateful to you, Liane, that you have done that today, what would be the one thing that, if you could come back on the show to share one more piece of really helpful information for those people out there that suffer a lot of stress, and it's usually the best of them that are high achievers, high driven, ambitious, what would be the one thing, if you had the opportunity to really speak into their life with, perhaps a word of inspiration or some wisdom, or just guiding them in the best way you know how?
This is something I speak to my clients about a lot, and I've started doing this myself. In 5 years, will this matter?
Wow. That's what I love.
If it doesn't, why are we holding on to it?
Yeah.
I can remember when my baby, the one that used to scream all the time, I would say to myself, in 20 minutes, this will be different. In 20 minutes, this will be different. I'd get to the next 20 minutes. In 20 minutes, this will be different. That is how I got through having a child that screamed 15 hours a day.
Wow.
Every day for months. Yeah. And it's asking us, in 5 years' time, or it could be a year's time or 6 months' time, will this even matter? If the answer's no, why are you holding on to it? Why are you letting it consume you now?
That is amazing. So, you know, Liane, I know you do have programs coming up soon. And from the point that, you know, the person who really, really is praying for your service, they may hear this in 5 years and it's never going to get old. It's ancient wisdom. It's true body work. It's true, you know, that philosophy that really comes from, you know, the body's wisdom of healing itself. You know, the big question is, we're going to put all of your details in the show notes here so people can get in contact. But thinking of the future, what would be your greatest recommendation of where to find you?
The best thing to do is to either email me or text me, to be honest with you, because that way we can have a bit of a chat if we need to, and we, you know, we can book an appointment for you. I don't have a calendar and that kind of thing. I prefer to book it myself because I like to actually have some contact with my clients before I book them in and get an idea of what they want to work on, if they have an idea, and then work out a program for them, whether it be kinesiology, they might want hypnotherapy, or they might want a combination of both. So I like to have a bit more interaction with them rather than them just booking an appointment.
You know, I believe there's a lot of people that would value that, because this is the old traditional style. And, you know, for people that really want to connect, feel safe about, you know, coming into your program and be well informed, that is going to be very, very appealing. So you've heard the lady. Thank you so much, Liane.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
And, you know, I just want to say, remember, sharing is caring. So make sure if you know someone who is suffering in the way that Liane has been talking about on this show, make sure you give them a copy of this incredible sequence to help someone else. And if it's you, get in touch with Liane. All the elements of how you can do so, her email and her number, will be in the show notes. So that's all for this week's podcast on Terri Messenger's Genius Zone. Thank you for joining us on another empowering episode of our show, where we have explored through this various topic, along with all the exciting new topics that we bring every week to enhance your personal mastery of excellence. Now, I'd love you to do me a favor. In fact, be part of the Legacy 1 million that I have in the vision for 2028. If you know someone who really would benefit from this recording, from this episode, please share it with them. And when you subscribe, you get notified every week of our episode as soon as it drops. So let's do that legacy thing. Let's share, let's care, let's enrich. And I look forward to bringing you another week of the most enriching content. So until next time, stay inspired, stay awesome, and keep on mastering your excellence.